The stages of Mortal Kombat II. Hello my fellow oddities, today we are continuing our crusade ranking the Mortal Kombat stages, and mkII is officially up on the chopping block. Honestly, this is easily the hardest game to rank in the entire series, because let's face facts, mkII features the absolute best arenas in the franchise. In terms of visuals and music, it is completely unmatched. We have 10 iconic stages to cover today, including the lone hidden survivor returning from mkII. And a quick reminder, stage fatalities are not being considered for this ranking. We are strictly judging the vibe, the visuals, and the violence of the killer soundtrack. So let's dive in. And last at number 10, the Armory. Look, none of these stages deserve to be called bad, but something has to have the dishonor of being at the bottom, and this stage simply has the fewest tricks up its sleeve. That said, the atmospheric lighting here is incredible. The dripping, glowing lava cast a warm yellow hue across the room, reflecting beautifully off of the massive dragon logo, giving it a shadowy dark purple top, fading into a radiant orange bottom. The stone pillars with sinister faces carved into them show off that new gothic horror aesthetic, something that, as you'll see throughout this list, defines mkII's new vibe. But the armory trips up a little in two areas. First, it's a bit empty. Aside from a few static weapon racks, there are no background characters, no moving machinery, and nothing to dissect, a flaw the mkIX remake of this stage greatly corrected. Second, the music. They use this bizarre, alien-feeling synth that fits the unsettling vibe of Outworld while you're actively mid-battle, but as a standalone track, it doesn't work nearly as well. And then there's those screams of agony in the background, which again can provide a creepy atmosphere in-game, but when isolated, it's just goofy. I'm not saying these tracks need to be certified platinum record bangers, but when other soundtracks from this title are legitimately great to listen to, this one falls behind. The Armory is a perfectly badass backdrop, but against the stiff competition of this game, it unfortunately finds its way stumbling to the bottom. At number 9, I have the Combat Tomb. When you think of a tomb stage in a video game, you probably picture dark catacombs, crumbling gothic architecture, and, you know, tombs. But this arena doesn't really capture any of that, aside from a few skulls. Even the color palette is a weird choice. While the orange looks nice, it's incredibly vibrant and overwhelming with nothing to break it up. And it definitely doesn't scream dark ancient burial chamber. I actually put together a quick mock-up of how a simple color palette edit could greatly improve this stage, and personally, I think it works a lot better. Thankfully, future games like MK4 and Deadly Alliance understood the assignment when making their tomb stages. Now that's a lot of complaining for this stage, but the Combat Tomb does have plenty of redeeming qualities. The giant yin-yang symbol looks incredibly striking, the ceiling spikes are legendary, and I love that weird pterodactyl flying around in the background skybox. But the absolute savior of this stage, and the thing that catapults it above the armory, is the music. This theme is one of my personal favorites in all of Mortal Kombat. It is such an absolute vibe, perfectly capturing that weird, mystical Outworld atmosphere while driving an upbeat tempo that just blesses your eardrums. Aside from the obvious techno syndrome, this is one of the very first tracks I think of when I picture classic MK. It is that iconic. To be honest, if you stripped away this legendary soundtrack, the Armory would likely beat this stage out. But a theme this god tier simply refuses to let the Combat Tomb fall to last place. At number 8, I have the Tower. The fact that a stage this cool is sitting at number 8 just proves how absurdly stacked this game is. What I love most about the tower is the subtle mystery of its background. You can see the clouds rapidly whipping past the window, leaving it completely ambiguous. Does Outworld just have supersonic weather, or is this entire stone tower actually hurling through the sky? It's a quiet detail that constantly reminds you that you aren't on Earth anymore. The architecture itself is clean, simple, and acts as a nice visual palette cleanser from the gothic horror of the other arenas. You also have a lone shadow priest floating in the background watching the fight. Adding characters to the backdrop, even little things like the yellow eyes on Goro's lair, always adds a ton of quite literal life to these stages. If I had to nitpick, and at this point on the list we are entering extreme nitpicky territory from here on out, it can feel just a little empty, similar to the armory. And I also wish the colors were a bit more vibrant. If there's one thing this game's stages don't cover, it's that super saturated, colorful aesthetic of something like Shang Tsung's throne room in mkII. And when I look at this stage, I see something that could have tackled that approach. But then you have the soundtrack, which I absolutely love. While it doesn't quite match the heights of the combat tomb, it is a perfect fit for the stage. It's easily the most mystical track on the OST, blending an upbeat rhythm with this semi-beautiful, semi-haunting choir. It's the kind of track that gives you goosebumps while you're locked into a match. The tower is an easy A+ tier stage, but because this is Mortal Kombat II, A+ doesn't even get you close to the top 5. At number 7, I have the Wasteland. I love the atmosphere here. If you know me, you know I am a sucker for that classic purple tinted outworld sky, and this stage is basically the genesis of that entire aesthetic. It just oozes pure, sinister energy. The unkept stone architecture, the creepy statues, and the jagged temple in the background gave Outworld a distinct alien identity, something it has been sorely lacking in recent years. Just look at the environments in MKX, MK11, or the live-action movies. Modern Outworld has become so incredibly generic. It shouldn't just be Earth but everyone is sad. That's boring. I find it wild how the coolest world-building elements established in Outworld's very first appearance have slowly been stripped away over time. It's like we're evolving, but backwards. But getting back on track, you cannot talk about the Wasteland without mentioning the skeletons and impaled corpses in the background. It is the perfect piece of environmental storytelling. You're fighting in a seemingly normal Outworld area, only to look closely and realize the decaying remains of past warriors are just left rotting where they fell. It instantly makes you feel the sheer, unchecked barbarism of this other realm. So why is a stage I've done nothing but glaze sitting at number 7? Aside from the top 6 being absolute titans, no get out of here Chronica, the Wasteland unfortunately lacks its own musical identity. It reuses the soundtrack from The Pit 2, a track that, as we'll get into, is far from my favorite in this game. I'm sure it was due to hardware limitations or tight deadlines, but regardless, it leaves the Wasteland feeling a bit shortchanged. Give this arena a unique, haunting, gothic theme, and it easily knocks onto the door of the top 5. But without its own soundtrack, it has to settle for number 7. At number 6, we have the sole returning stage from the original Mortal Kombat, Goro's Lair. This is the game's hidden stage you only fight on when unlocking the secret battles against Smoke, Jade, and Noob Saibot. And nothing more so proves the elite status of MK2's arenas quite like this. The number 1 stage from my last video can't even crack the top 5 here. But there is an elephant to address here. If they had ported this stage over exactly as it was in 1992, it'd easily sit amongst the upper echelon of stages. But they made a tragic, baffling change that severely damages its standing with the music. You will rarely hear me say this about arcade-era OSTs, and maybe it's just from comparing it to the original, but the MK2 Goro's Lair theme is absolute, unmitigated buns. This sounds like something you'd hear on a game over screen, not the epic theme of a final boss stage or secret character battle, especially when we all know how hard the original 1992 theme went. Why on earth would they go out of their way to compose a completely new theme for a returning stage while the Wasteland couldn't even get its own track? It makes zero sense. Visually, it's still the same masterpiece, the glowing yellow eyes in the dark, the blood-stained stone, but that musical downgrade is a crime. If you want my full, much more positive breakdown of this arena, you can click the card in the top right hand corner to watch my mkII ranking once you're done here. Or you can also watch it right now, but please, come back. I need you. At number 5, we enter the Coliseum, Khan's Arena. We've officially arrived at the final boss stage of Mortal Kombat II, and the atmosphere absolutely matches those stakes. You are standing in the center of a massive, roaring outworld crowd, but a detail I really love, one that future adaptations completely ignored, are the tiny hooded figures watching from those devil horn skyboxes in the distance. They're likely just shadow priests, but it adds a mysterious layer to the audience. The actual pit feels less like a traditional arena and more like a gladiatorial bull ring, which is fitting because Kintaro and Shao Kahn fight like absolute bulls. Honestly, it makes Liu Kang's victory even more impressive, cause that dude is all red. Then you have the front and center visual anchors. Shao Kahn's throne is jagged with spikes and skulls, truly fitting for a deadly emperor.
Crispy.
And to the sides, you have Sonya Blade and Kano from the last game chained up as prisoners. Having established formerly playable characters from the first game rendered completely helpless in the background instantly raises the stakes. You know you are fighting for the fate of the world. So why is this iconic arena sitting at the bottom of the top 5? Well, once again, we have to talk about a wasted soundtrack opportunity. Like the Wasteland, Khan's Arena shares its OST with another stage, the Portal stage. And don't get me wrong, that track is great, but you can tell it wasn't composed specifically to accompany an epic final showdown. And that brings me right back to, why did they waste their time making a new, worse theme for Goro's Lair when the literal final boss stage of the game was left sharing a theme? Imagine capping off the game with a custom, heavy, dramatic boss theme roaring while you're fighting a battle for the fate of Earth. With dedicated OST, this likely breaches the top 3, but as it stands, Khan's Arena holds down a still respectable number 5.
Is that your best?
At number 4, we have the other arena that owns that shared soundtrack, the Portal. This stage has been getting a massive surge of love lately since the recent live-action mkII movie featured it prominently in the best fight scene of the film. Now, other than one quick moment, the movie mostly used the blue Sega Genesis recolor, which honestly I prefer, but the traditional orange arcade version is still an absolute stunner. Unlike the other arenas, the Portal actually benefits from being pretty basic. It's just a floating stone platform, a couple of shadow priests, an impossibly large moon, and the swirling rift itself. It's not a lot of things and mostly a lot of nothing, but that empty space is its greatest strength, making it feel abstract, kind of giving you a Vertigo-like uneasiness. Looking at that massive black hole style vortex makes you feel unsteady, like the background itself is trying to suck you in. And that is exactly what I love about mkII's art direction. They weren't constricted by earthly physics or logic, so they could just throw you in an unsettling, off-putting void and just tell you to
Fight.
Now, like I mentioned, it shares a track with Khan's Arena, but if I had to guess, this OST was likely composed for the Portal specifically. This is one of MK's most iconic tracks. Every single one of us could hear a single second of this and recognize it instantly. It has this upbeat rhythm which fits this stage perfectly because the arena is so vibrant and colorful, and if you listen closely to the background, you can hear these faintly warped, distorted instruments that really sell the vibe of fighting in front of a literal rift in time and space. I never thought a stage this abstract would be approachable for a live-action movie, especially for budget reasons, but they pulled it off beautifully, and they couldn't have done that if the original Mortal Kombat II hadn't laid down such an incredible blueprint. At number 3, we have the legendary Pit 2. The Pit 2 is an upgrade in every conceivable way to the original other than the stage fatality.
Reptile wins.
But that doesn't matter here, and in terms of atmosphere, aesthetic, and pure screen presence, it easily beats out the 1992 and even the 1995 counterparts. Make sure to subscribe to see my thoughts on the Pit 3 next time. This version features a much thinner stone bridge, which amplifies that constant lingering fear. One wrong step, and you are falling straight into the bed of spikes below. Well, not in this one. The bridge itself is packed with much more detail: jagged gothic masonry, horned monster faces, and glowing lanterns casting a warm orange light that contrasts beautifully against the cool darkness of the night sky. And then you look into the background. You see a parallel bridge with two mysterious fighters squaring off in battle. Of course, I am talking about Hornbuckle and Torch. Although calling it a battle is a stretch, it's actually more like Adesanya versus Romero. Still, these background combatants fueled the 90s rumor mill that helped make this franchise legendary. And hey, one of them eventually became Blaze in Deadly Alliance and Armageddon, which makes zero logical sense lore-wise, but people believe it, so we'll give it some points for that. In terms of pure raw visuals, the Pit 2 is not only the best looking stage in this game, but arguably in the entire franchise. If this was purely a looks contest, it'd be sitting comfortably at number 1. But once again, we have to talk about the OST. As we established earlier, the music is shared with the Wasteland. Now this theme was definitely composed for the Pit 2, as it shares some musical motifs with the Pit 1. But if I'm being completely honest, I don't love this theme that much. The heavy electric guitar riffs are amazing, but the segments in between those just don't do it for me. It's perfectly serviceable while you're actively throwing hands, but as background music for a YouTube video, like say this one, it's not a track I'm ever going to use. It just doesn't vibe the same way. But that is my single, solitary critique. Everything else about the Pit 2 is brilliant. You can have love for the original for nostalgic purposes, but in terms of being a real mark left on the series and not just a fond memory, the Pit 2 takes the cake. But the runner-up for best stage in Mortal Kombat 2 is the Dead Pool. I always have to leave an uncomfortably long pause between dead and pool just so people know what I'm talking about.
I know, right?
This stage fills the exact same role the original Pit did in 1992, a simple, notoriously lethal concept that instantly etched itself into the minds of every single kid in the arcade. But honestly, I think the Dead Pool is far superior. Sure, is a pit of spikes cooler than a pool of acid? Maybe, and it's not like you can really create a new stage out of it either. But aesthetically, the Dead Pool completely mogs the original Pit. While the Pit 1 is just a basic stone bridge against a night sky, the Dead Pool is dripping with unique details. It feels like a sickening cross between sewer and torture dungeon. You have giant doors tightly shut on either side, making you feel completely trapped, alongside strange statues and gated windows that are just filled with an eerie green void. Then you have the massive chains and hooks dangling from the ceiling. A lot of people actually suffer from a little bit of a Mandela effect here, remembering corpses hanging from those hooks. And while they were actually planned and even had sprites created for them, you can see what it was supposed to look like here. The released 1993 game didn't have any bodies on them. That detail was added later on in remakes and even incorporated into mkII Stage Fatality. And of course you have the acid itself, sitting right below the ledge. One wrong step and you're losing a foot. And we all know how much NetherRealm Studios would hate that, am I right? Then we get to the music. Holy peak. This is one of the quieter, more atmospheric themes in this game. It isn't frantic or super upbeat, but just that music cue. It's so good and leans more into dread. Since the Dead Pool is the very first stage you encounter when booting up the arcade ladder, this track serves as the perfect welcome mat to the horrors of Outworld. So why is it not the top spot? Simply put, I just like the other one better. Look, you try coming up with a valid flaw for a literal 10 out of 10 stage. It's impossible. The Dead Pool is easily one of the most legendary fighting game stages of all time, and it deserves a huge number 1 spot, but it happens to exist in a game with one other absolute masterpiece. And that is, at the number 1 spot, the best Mortal Kombat 2 stage, the Living Forest. Now, I know this might be a slightly controversial take, not that the community doesn't think the Living Forest is absolutely goated, but putting it above titans like the Pit 2 and the Deadpool isn't something you hear every day. But hear me out, this stage simply has everything. The atmosphere, the mystery, the horror, the otherworldliness, the music. It all starts with the trees themselves. Their design is the perfect balance. Future titles either made them look too monstrous, too human, or they just weren't even living at all. What the hell, mkII? But the 1993 original got it right the first time. They're pretty subtle. If you're playing for the first time, you might not even notice the faces until they begin to move, contorting and twisting as they roar or laugh in the background. It is wonderfully unsettling. The color palette is also amazing. The vibrant green moss and the deep blue fog in the background provide a nice contrast to the dark, decaying tree bark and muddy ground. It captures the exact brand of quiet, creepy atmosphere that I love when Mortal Kombat leans into. And an important distinction is being creepy, getting under your skin, not scary, trying to make you scream. I apologize. Please don't click off the video. The environmental storytelling is top tier here too. You have a single corpse wearing a rice hat overgrown with vines. It hints that maybe it isn't just the trees that are sentient. The entire plant life of the forest is alive and waiting for fallen warriors to succumb here so they can consume them. And then you have the soundtrack. Honestly, how does it keep getting better? This track introduces an almost tribal, jungle-like theme that perfectly suits the setting, and it hits that sweet spot for fighting game stages, incredibly immersive and tense during a match, but as a standalone track, an absolute vibe. To top it all off, the Living Forest has the secret character cameos. Seeing Smoke or Jade peeking out from behind the trees added that layer of mystery which made the arcade era revolutionary in gaming. The only real criticism this stage has ever faced was its lack of stage fatality. The rumor mill, as it does, ran with myths about throwing your opponent into a tree's mouth, a feature that wouldn't become real until Shaolin Monks and mkII. But we aren't judging fatalities today. That's for Nick to do. We are judging the atmosphere, the visuals, and the soundtrack. By those metrics, and even without a big finisher, the Living Forest is the best Mortal Kombat 2 stage and one of the greatest arenas the franchise has ever seen. But that's just my humble opinion. What's yours? Let me know in the comments down below, both your favorite and least favorite stages from this game. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content just like this, and that's wraps on this one, my fellow oddities. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.